Hey y'all, Father Jim Haney from St. Paul's in the Plains in Lubbock and Texas Tech, Canterbury. I just got back from a week of church camp at Cathedral Ridge, our middle school and senior high camp, Camp Quarterman, which we hold up in Colorado every year, up in the mountains near Woodland Park, which is up in the mountains about a 40-minute drive from Colorado Springs. You basically drive from Lubbock to Colorado Springs, turn left up into the mountains, wind around a little bit, go around Pikes Peak, and you're there. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. It's about a 500-mile trip from Lubbock up to Cathedral Ridge. And when you get there, you are going around Pikes Peak. Pikes Peak is one of the 14ers, one of the 50-plus mountains in Colorado that is more than 14,000 feet in elevation. It's an impressive sight. It looms large over the surrounding scenery. If you had to walk up it, you would be chugging because it's a tall mountain. It's a big mountain. It doesn't start from 14,000 feet, from 0 feet. We don't start at sea level. Colorado's about a mile up when you get there, but it's still almost a 2-mile climb from the base to the top. An impressive mountain. But then again, I drove more than 500 miles, and from that standpoint, Pikes Peak being less than 3 miles tall, from that standpoint, it's not that big. Even Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, that's only about 5.5 miles high. Yes, it's quite the climb. You even need oxygen at the top. The atmosphere gets so thin that far up, but compared to the size of the Earth is about 8,000 miles across, 7,900 and something, I forget. About 8,000 miles across, and about 24,000 miles plus in diameter, in circumference. Compared to that, a 3-mile mountain, even a 5.5-mile mountain, really isn't that big of a deal. It's been observed that if you shrunk the Earth down to about this size, about the size of a billiard ball, this is actually a dog toy, the mountains would be hardly perceptible. This dog toy has raised continents, not very accurate continents, but I had a globe when I was a kid and had little mountains and you could feel them. They would kind of rise up from the surface of the globe. Sometimes you see relief maps and the plastic mountains come out from the map quite a ways. But really, in the scheme of things, if the Earth was the size of a billiard ball, about this size, the Earth would seem as round as a billiard ball is. It wouldn't be as smooth. The mountains do provide a little bit of roughness, but the biggest mountains would be like the grit on coarse sandpaper. They'd be hardly perceptible, just add a little roughness to the surface of the Earth. So from the standpoint of the size of the entire Earth, the mountains are really fairly small, after all. But from our standpoint, when you're standing at the base of a mountain, when you're trying to climb a mountain, they can seem positively enormous. And I think that's an important lesson for us in life. There are things that we encounter in life, and when we're slogging along from our perspective and we hit these obstacles, we hit these impediments, we hit these challenges, they can just seem enormous. But compared to the rest of the universe, compared to God's perspective of things, these things are not as big as they might appear to us with our limited perspectives. Psalm 95, the wonderful psalm that we often use for morning prayer services, says that in God's hands are the caverns of the earth and the heights of the hills are his also. God encompasses in his hands all of the variations of our world, and from his perspective, they're not that big. And so to us, they may be huge hiccups, but in the big scheme of things, compared to the Earth, a tall mountain is really like the grain of sand on a piece of sandpaper. Perhaps that's what makes teen suicide, the suicide of a young person, so tragic. Oftentimes, kids that take their lives like that are without hope. They figure that the problems they're encountering are just too painful, just too large to deal with. But in the big perspective of things, they're not as big, as serious, as major as they might at first appear. As has been observed, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and that's what makes it especially tragic. Now, I don't want to downplay the problems we encounter in life. Life can be tough. And when you're small and trying to slug up a mountain that's 14,000 feet high, it will seem enormous. But in the big picture of things, the problems we encounter are not as big as they might appear. And from God's perspective, they're certainly not as major as we might think they are. And so, with that thought, I will leave you. God bless, and have a wonderful day.